political influenced process. Is that governments are trying, with the help of NGOs, to pursue their foreign policy.
You mean this is happening here or in the US?
It is happening in the US. It's standard,
Oh, I see.
and we are moving in that way, kind of. And one could say, yeah, the government doles out money, so you want structural, you want to know what happens, and you want to have proper control of it. But then you can ask, does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have the knowledge about what should be done in a country? And when you're talking about we want to support democracy in other countries, whereas you want to build a strong civil society, then maybe you should also invest in a strong civil society in your own country to do that. But you could also say maybe these ministries of foreign affairs shouldn't work through non-country, so international NGOs at all. They should only work with local organizations. But then how do these two groups find each other? And that's a problematic where we will continue on later on, because that's the dynamic of the discussion right now. And as we know now, we've already touched upon it, everything is completely political. So governments are giving support for government, but also multilateral organizations and EU, etc. They give development help as a moral excuse for not putting up real work in it or taking real risks. They support civil society in countries with other belief systems, effectively creating critical mass. Whereas if there is a symmetrical situation of another country doing that in your own country, making a lot of problems about it. For instance, Saudi Arabia investing in mosques in the Netherlands. It's a big scandal about it, whereas we're supporting newspapers, critical people in Russia and China, and we think, yeah, of course, that's human rights. So there is an interesting thing there. And then, of course, one more, and that is anti-migration policies. Is that we see migrants coming to Europe and the US, and we're trying to ensure that a country develops itself well, so that not all migrants, especially the migrants that are not very economically viable in our society, stay there and do not come here. Another quite cynical thing in this, in respect to global warming, you see that we have not really made a lot of progress in Durban with latest conference on climate change. But when you see which industry is profiting a lot from the whole discussion on climate change, is defense. Because what the argument is that with harvests going bad, there are going to be more floods, more tsunamis, people are going to flee, there are going to be instability, and instability is going to create migration flows, and our countries cannot cope with these migration flows, so we should try to hold stability. And this is the motivation with which a lot of defense ministries and contractors are now putting up, we can do this. And this fits also within the paradigm of development help, rule of law, security, try to keep it stable.
But do you mean that there is an active lobby against coming to agreements in, for example, Durban, by those industries?
No, I wouldn't. No. Okay. Perhaps, but I haven't got. I'm just saying that I see all of a sudden guys in uniforms telling me about climate change. It's weird, you know. I'm used to the other way around. Then from media development, we did some development, so now we go a bit more to media. So what can media do, and then especially for democracy and human rights? So it has a watchdog function, strengthening democracy by holding those in power accountable, to amplify voices. But the problem with the media is that often it are the same people with the same voices that are amplified over and over and over again. But of course, in the best way possible, you hope that to give the people, minority groups and the people who are not accounted for mostly in the process, also get a voice. Media can influence discourse, but by influencing discourse it can also turn itself against a minority. And we have seen this a lot. We have seen this in Rwanda, where the radio station Milkolim, which was a government radio station, which is missed in a lot of talk about this, called for the Hutus to cut down all the tall trees, referring to the Tutsis. Media not only played a large role in disseminating not only the feeling, but also in actively coordinating the killings. I think there's still a Tutsi village there, so mobilizing can not only done, it was now done in Egypt, for positive change, it can also be done for very negative, radical outcomes. And it results in a completely scarred country. But Rwanda, being a small country, very condensed, it is also a country of opposites, because within 2 months after the ending of the genocide, an organization started airing radio soaps. Then it was completely impossible to talk about Hutus and Tutsis at all, but by creating another story, having people already working on trauma and talking about it, talking about what happened, how could it happen, and with a Shakespearean love story about two families that hate each other, you can already set up again channels of communication. So what I'm trying to get at is that media can be, as many tools, be used for good and bad. And a thing that I think we want to get pluralist voices out. So we want to give voice to dissent and shed light on things that normally are not seen or felt. It's all about decentralizing power. But then, unfortunately, it's all about money. Because you can have all the purest ideals, but people still have to eat on the end of the day. And as Volker said, I just returned from Somalia. And Somalia is a country which in Africa has a pretty good preconditions. It's at the sea, so it's not landlocked. It's one ethnicity, they're all Somali. They're one language, one could debate if there is, but still, they're in 20 years of brutal civil war now. And the country is split up in sub-clans, clans, sub-clans, sub-sub-clans, but it's not a wasteland. It's the country with the fastest banking system in the world. From everywhere in the Netherlands, I can transfer money to Somalia within the hour. Try to do that within Europe. And if I want internet in Somalia, I can get it everywhere within 24 hours. Also edge. So there's also a lot of stuff happening, and there's a sprawling media sector, especially a lot of radio stations. But what are these radio stations doing? They're catering mostly for their sub-clan. So they want to grow, but still they are dependent for the income from people from their own sub-clan. So we're working with them on how to create a business model that you can get a larger audience. Then you have to think about what does your target audience want to hear. So if they want reliable and relevant information, then you can get over your sub-clan, but then you don't have the steady income from your own brother or nephew, etc. So then you're really dependent on your content. Because right now, media owners are not paying their journalists. Journalism is a very popular profession in Somalia. So journalists come and they do their work, and when they get a bit better, they start working somewhere else. And this way you can never build a sustainable and strong media sector. So we're working with them on creating business models to show that if you have relevant and good programming, that you can make money and try to use that as well. But then on the other side, there is this huge pressure from political groups who also see the importance of media to pay money to journalists and media outlets, and then it can be easy money. But then it's a slippery slope. Once you do it, you could really quickly lose your credibility. And if you lost your credibility, well, you can always fall back on your sub-plan. So there's this Dutch saying, trust comes by foot and goes by horse. And that's